Welcome to week 1, Conceptualization of Addictive Behaviors, lecture 2. The question to answer for today is the following. Is there any empirical evidence that addictive behavior can be prevented and or effectively treated? The short answer is yes. There is considerable empirical evidence that some treatments help lower the incidence of addictive behavior. For example, what do we mean by that? For example, there are treatments that decrease the death rate due to addictive behavior, or that help prevent individuals from actually becoming addicted to a substance. However, there is considerable lack of awareness of this information by two groups in general. The general public and many political leaders seem to not have gotten that information or are not aware of this information, that there are excellent treatments for addictive behavior. The result is that often there's little evidence of policy toward addiction that is grounded in what we have learned scientifically about addictive behavior. So we hope that that will decrease over time and that there's greater awareness of what those actual treatments are that can be quite helpful for individuals who are suffering. There are numerous programs that have been scientifically determined to be effective in preventing and treating addictive behavior. And let me just name some of these kinds of treatments. One are school-based programs for high school students. These have been looked at for over quite a period of time, and some really great school-based programs for high school students have been developed. I'll look at more of that when we get to the public health model. Two, there are some community-based programs that include parents and school involvement that are helpful in lowering or help preventing addictive behavior. There's some school-based programs and community-based programs that have been tried that haven't been very successful, but there are others that are really quite good. There are ongoing programs with kind of booster sessions. That means that although sometimes a particular treatment or particular program comes up, there's been growing awareness that that one-shot deal may not work, and that we may need to educate or deal with this over a period of time with programs that kind of boost the practice of what the individual or the child has learned, okay? So that there's an ongoing programs with these booster sessions that work better than a one-time program. For programs, there are programs that address peer norms, which is invaluable since it addresses the group rather than merely the individual. So often we begin to focus on the individual addict, but we forget or we don't look at programs that actually look at the system, the environment, family, friends, etc. So these peer groups, these programs that address peer norms are invaluable in transcending merely looking at the individual, but looking at the system and the individual in relationship to others. There are evidence-based programs out there rather than, my friend tried this and it worked for her, or it worked for him, or it worked for me. So that's what we ought to do. And in fact, I know programs like that. I'm not going to say, but there are individual organizations that, they went, it worked for somebody, so let's just make it into a program and give it to everyone. Well, or, it seems like a good idea, but, but they've not subjected it to rigorous scientific outcome studies. Science, and when, really wants to look at something over a period of time to see whether it effectively gets the results that it does. And once a program does that over and over and over again, and the research studies show, what we call outcome studies show that it is working, then we would say that that's an evidence-based program. But it has to be more than just a good idea, or it seems to me that it worked, or I tried it, or my mom did it and it worked for her. That would not be a scientifically or based program or an evidence-based program at all. It requires rigorous scientific outcome studies. There are evidence-based programs that consider the level of motivation or readiness of the client to change, which is really important. If the individual isn't motivated to change, maybe we need to think about what might help the individual to become motivated, rather than just thinking, well, they ought to be motivated because they're in such misery. No, there are evidence-based programs that consider the level of the motivation and readiness of the client to change, and even what can be done at the different levels of motivation or readiness that the client may exhibit. There are abstinence, contingency management programs. There are abstinent programs. Abstinent programs means that we just try to get the individual not to use the substance. You know, a long time ago, there was the just say no, that just say no, just don't do it. Well, the just say no program wasn't tremendously successful. And so science didn't give up on abstinence. So the idea was abstinence just as the just say no approach was, but they tried it in different ways based upon theories that worked in other settings. So abstinence contingency management programs use the behavioral model, which we'll be discussing later, to reward abstinence when an individual is able to refrain from using a substance. So it works on the behavioral that behavioral model. As I said, we're going to be looking at that in the in this course. Clearly, there are numerous types of evidence-based models and treatments for addictive behavior prevention and treatment. We now have evidence-based treatments that go beyond merely changing dysfunctional beliefs and attitudes among addicts. Treatments that actually focus on changing behavior along with changing beliefs and attitudes. And in upcoming lectures, I'm going to go into considerable detail on those evidence-based models for prevention and treatment that have that behavioral component. We've learned this in other settings. Let me give an example of this. When I have two daughters, and when my daughters were quite young, we learned that it is really important that if you're going to take your daughters to the park, or they're going to go with the school to the park, etc., it's really important that we educate them, we give them information and try to have them develop some of awareness that there may be people in the park who try to get them to go away with them. They may say, you know, here I have a little puppy, you want to pet my puppy, and then gradually take them away and abscond with your child. And so we were told that we need, you know, for like example at the dinner table, we just discuss this, and we may even use some questions and answers. So what if somebody says that, would you like to pet my puppy? And then you say, no, my mommy said not to. Well, would you like to go to my car because I've got some candy there? No. I'm coming here because your mommy told me that I should pick you up. Okay? So you see, we would talk about this. And so really interesting research found that you could do that and practice that, but sometimes, and actually with great frequency, and this has been recorded, you would take the child to the park and somebody says, would you like to pet my puppy? Oh yeah, and then they would go away with them. Well, why? Well, we now know that, that the child cognitively grasped it, but behaviorally hadn't practiced it. So that what we learned was, when you take the child to the park, act it out. And then that way might help prevent the child from going away with someone who tries to tempt them or lure them away. So we had first had kind of a cognitive model and a cognitive approach to it. And then we saw that helping our child in such a situation involves more than just thinking and cognition. It involves developing behavioral knowing and practicing, okay? So the same thing in the treatment of addictive behavior. We've learned more, and now it goes beyond just trying to change beliefs and attitudes to actual changing of behaviors in addition to problematical beliefs and attitudes, okay? First, I think it is really important and untrue to say that a model is evidence-based. And so I want to spend some time talking about what I mean by that phrase, evidence-based treatment. A lot of people think that models are evidence-based, and it's not really true. A model is not an evidence-based model. A model is evidence-based to treat a particular condition. So a particular model for addictions might be good for treating cocaine, but it may not be good for treating alcohol addiction. So one model would be evidence-based for cocaine treatment, but not evidence-based for alcohol, etc. So it is important that we not say across the board that a model is evidence-based. The only way that we determine whether a model is evidence-based for a particular treatment, for a particular condition or population, is to do numerous outcome studies to see what the results are. And then we can say that the treatment, the model or the treatment intervention is evidence-based for that particular condition, etc. Okay. This is it for lecture number 2 in week 1. Next week, week 2, we're going to be looking at some very important models, 2 very important models for treating addictive behavior, namely the disease model and also the public health model. So have a good day.
I plan to use my degree ultimately just to help people. I'm here to find out specifically what demographic that is.
The professors really take the time to look at the courses and how they're going to prepare us to be counselors.
I'm just really excited to get to learn from these people that have so much experience in this field.
It's obvious that they have a passion for what they're doing, not just because they enjoy it, but because they know they're investing in someone else. And that's most important to me.
I ultimately chose CIU because of the community. I love the fact that I know that I will be with the same people for the next 3 years.
We have a time during our classes where we get to be in small groups, and that allows us to get to know each other and to support one another and to learn together. I feel like I'm right where I need to be, and I'm grateful to get to be a part of this program.